All right, as a disclaimer, this is my first show with a live audience. My 3-month-old daughter, Savannah, a little bit older than 3 months, is literally sitting right in front of me. So we're hoping we don't have a meltdown, but she wants to hear about this guy. She wants to hear about Vita Vea, who went to high school 6.5 miles away from Levi's Stadium, and she wants to hear about Deebo Samuel's contract. She is expressing her approval right now. 49ers and Deebo Samuel's representation, Tory Dandy, got a very, very intriguing incentive-laden deal done. But on the Vita Vea front, guys, I think a trade seems more likely than ever. A lot of teams are interested. Adam Schefter was on the Pat McAfee show today, and he said that I think Vita Vea being traded is certainly a possibility. I don't see this situation anytime soon. Well, I don't think this is properly transcribed by Pat McAfee's Twitter, but he's saying that he doesn't see the situation resolved with Tampa Bay anytime soon. Vita obviously unhappy with his contract entering the final year, and he wants to be traded. Apparently, Vita Vea is very, very upset. It wouldn't surprise me if Tampa traded him not ahead of the deadline, later this summer. Jeremy Fowler said that several teams are interested in Vita Vea, have expressed interest in a trade. I would assume that the 49ers are one of those teams in the win now mode that they face, with Vita Vea wanting to come to California, play for either the 49ers, the Rams, the Chargers, or Nevada with the Las Vegas Raiders. Again, 6.5 miles away from Levi's Stadium for one of the great talents in this league, the 350-pounder Vita Vea. So if the Bucs get an offer good enough, and I don't know if the 49ers are willing to reach, or any team is willing to reach that threshold by the end of summer, but we've seen these trades start to happen with greater regularity. I get it. Myles Garrett to the Rams, but don't forget Dexter Lawrence from the Giants to the Cincinnati Bengals. All right, we're here at golden hour, not so golden today. The fog this time rolling in behind me in San Francisco, swimming in the bay, and it was choppy as hell. This is the summertime weather that we come to expect in this city. Speaking one more on the defensive tackles before we get to the Deebo Samuel contract. 49ers picked up a very good defensive tackle via trade already. So they're willing to send draft capital for a strong player at the position. Look at the most quarterback pressures against double teams over the past 2 seasons. Number 2 is Osa Odighizuwa, whom the 49ers traded for. A third-round pick went to Dallas for Osa. Look who's right under Osa Odighizuwa over the past 2 years. Pressures against double teams. Vita Vea with 29. You know, anytime that you can be higher up on a list than Vita Vea, Leonard Williams, and Jeffrey Simmons, the great defensive tackle of the Tennessee Titans, that is an impressive feat. Now, what makes this doubly impressive for Vita Vea is that Osa Odighizuwa is about 290 pounds. Vita Vea, meanwhile, weighs about 350. Normally, this type of body, you would say, okay, this guy's going to be a good run stopper, but can he rush the passer? Does he have enough athleticism? And the answer for Vita Vea is yes. Just watch his high school tape. Down at Milpitas, again, 6.5 miles away from Levi's Stadium, he was playing running back. Again, this guy right here was playing running back. So that's what makes him so special. The Bucs have been one of the league's best run defenses ever since they drafted him out of Washington in 2018. He is both a run stuffer and a premier pass rusher. Could be the final piece for a Super Bowl bid for a team like the 49ers. But I don't know. Tampa Bay, according to Jeremy Fowler, is not planning to trade him. He didn't say they won't trade him. He said they're not planning to. I think they're trying to drive up the price. Anybody who trades for this guy is going to have to give him a new deal. He wants a new deal. I would assume well upwards of $20 million per year. 49ers have enough short-term space. Not sure that they have enough long-term space, but if they're going to start mortgaging the future, it would be for a player like Vita Vea, who is now on the wrong side of 30, but still playing dominant football. All right, we've got to get to this. This is Deebo Samuel's contract. As reported a few days ago, they signed him one-year deal worth up to $7 million. up to $7 million. As I told you, the salary cap hit would likely be under $5 million. That indeed is the case. Total guaranteed money for Deebo Samuel. So here's how it works. 54% of that $7 million contract is guaranteed. What's guaranteed? Well, his base salary, which is going to be paid out on a weekly basis, it's going to total $3.27 million, and his signing bonus, which he gets now, $490,000. So that adds up to $3.76 million. But then there is a complex set of incentives that I think is a testament to how well Brian Hampton, who's taken over for Parag Marathe, he'd taken over for him over a year ago, but how well Brian Hampton negotiated this contract for the 49ers, and how well Deebo Samuel's agent, Torrey Dandy, who worked with the 49ers back in 2022 when Deebo signed the mega deal. That was much bigger. That was like a $75 million deal. But I think these two parties worked together to really thread a needle because Deebo, again, wrong side of 30, and 49ers, tight salary cap situation, but look how they threaded the needle. The salary cap hit between $4 and $5 million for this season. That is the guaranteed money plus the incentives that he's likely to earn. So this is an overhead view. He can earn incentives through actual game day participation up to $340,000. Then there are performance incentives, and then there are playoff multipliers. So we can go through all of those things. First, this is the weekly roster bonus incentive. Deebo Samuel can make up to $340,000, which is $20,000 per game if he's active. So for every single game that Deebo Samuel is active, he is going to make an additional $20,000. Because he was active for 16 games for Washington last year, $320,000 of that is likely to be earned, which means that $320,000 of that hits the salary cap, which means that Deebo Samuel's salary cap hit for the 49ers is just north of $4 million. Then we look at the individual production incentives. Now, this is where this gets more complicated, but this is something that the 49ers and Deebo Samuel, I think, needed to get done to make this work because it's such an unusual position that he's being put in. And this is not to be the lead Z receiver. This is to fill in as an offensive weapon at a more advanced age. And it's a player who's had a history of being in shape and out of shape, and he's in shape right now. But obviously you want to get the best out of Deebo Samuel. So incentive-based is what it had to be. He's got one incentive for $200,000 if he exceeds 600 receiving yards, anywhere between, yards from scrimmage. So if you add rushing and receiving, 600 to 802 yards, that's $200,000. If he goes over 803 yards from scrimmage, it increases to $450,000. Same thing for touchdowns. If he scores 5 or 6 touchdowns, an added $200,000 bonus. If he scores more than 7 touchdowns or 7 or more touchdowns, it's a $450,000 bonus. Our audience, you guys can give me a thumbs up if you can hear. You're not going to see her. We're not showing her face. But our audience, 3-month-old Savannah Lombardi, you might hear her right now. Maybe. If I stop talking, she's going to get really upset. She wants to hear more about this Deebo Samuel contract. So if you guys hear her, give me a thumbs up. If you don't hear her, give me a thumbs down on the comment section. Anyway, these are the performance incentives for Deebo Samuel. Then you've got the playoff premium. If Deebo hits these incentives right here and the 49ers make the playoffs, that is a team goal, these incentives will double. 2x. The touchdown payout and the scrimmage yards payout will double, and the combined value of both can reach $1.8 million. It's a lot of money. Savannah thinks it's a lot of money. She hasn't made that much yet. I think she's going to make her exit right now. Will she? Or do you think she's good? Lombardi herself's taking care of her. I don't know if the audience is. Let's see what they're saying. They're giving a thumbs down, which means they can't hear her. So I think it's okay right now. Give me a thumbs up if you can. There's also a durability incentive or a playtime usage incentive for Deebo Samuel. If he's over 68% of offensive snaps, he gets $250,000. And if they use him as a kick returner and he has a top 10 kick return average, Deebo Samuel will also make $250,000. If the 49ers make the postseason, both metrics can earn an extra $250,000, would be tacked on top of both. All in all, if you add everything, Deebo Samuel, including a $100,000 Pro Bowl incentive, can make up to $7 million. So again, in the simplest form, about 54% of this $7 million contract is guaranteed. I would say that about 65% of this $7 million contract is likely to be earned by Deebo Samuel based on the incentives that he met last year. And then he can make up to a full $7 million if he hits every single incentive. I think that is unquestionably a fair deal for both sides. Deebo had been unsigned up until now. He had a solid year last year with over 700 receiving yards. The 49ers, though, are going to be using him not only as a receiver, they're going to be using him as a running back. They're going to be using him as a kick returner. He is committed to returning kicks full time, according to John Lynch. I would even venture as far to say that this is like the Sky Moore acquisition, but with significantly higher offensive upside. The 49ers needed a return specialist. And I know they didn't get a punt return specialist through this. Deebo's going to return kicks. But they needed a kick return specialist. But there was a greater desire to get a veteran who can plug and play and deliver offensively, not necessarily as a standard wideout. And if you're signing Deebo Samuel to be a standard wide receiver, I think that's a losing proposition, but to be a unique offensive weapon whom Kyle Shanahan can deploy all around the field. The last time that we saw Deebo Samuel in a 49ers uniform, he was the show. He was the primary receiver, and it wasn't good, right? There was too much pressure on Deebo Samuel. He's not a great separator. They didn't have Brandon Ayuk anymore because he got hurt in week 7. Ricky Pearsall was just starting to come into his own toward the end of the season, but he was still a rookie coming off getting shot in the chest. The 49ers separation scores were the worst in the league in 2024. It was not a situation in which Deebo Samuel was set up to really succeed. And that you saw him pressing in that 2024 season. You saw him drop that slant against the Rams that would have won the game for the 49ers. It was unfortunate, right? But he was playing out of position. Deebo is a battering ram. Deebo is one of the most unique players to ever put on an NFL uniform. Ever since they started measuring this yards after contact and yards after the catch, Deebo Samuel has broken the scale for wide receivers in terms of yards after the catch. No wide receiver has averaged more since they started tracking this, and it's by a wide amount. So he's essentially like a running back playing receiver. It's a very, very unique skill set. He's not going to be your standard separator. He's not going to be this smooth mover like a Ricky Pearsall. He's not going to be an X like a Mike Evans or a Brandon Ayuk back when Brandon Ayuk was still interested in playing football. That's not the story with Deebo Samuel. He is the change of pace battering ram, especially at this point of his career, because you're not going to be funneling the entire offense through him. He was able to do it in 2021 when he was just off the charts with the yardage and the production. But now he's going to be the change of pace battering ram that can line up in the backfield, spell Christian McCaffrey. He can line up at receiver, improve your screen game, take a short pass, and obviously create some yak. He can catch you off guard with a deep ball, that's for sure. But he's not going to be this nimble route runner. You're going to rely on other guys in this offense to do that. You're going to rely on Dejon Stribling. You're going to rely on Christian Kirk. You're going to rely, obviously, on Mike Evans. Even your tight end, George Kittle is a really good receiver. Christian McCaffrey is a really good receiver. I mean, you have a lot of talent that can run routes and catch the football, but Deebo Samuel is a one-of-one bulldozer, and the 49ers, I think they're going to use him much more sparingly than they did before, but in case they use him a little bit more and to motivate Deebo, stay in shape and try to get some of these incentives, he can make up to those $7 million. So that is the latest from the 49ers with the Deebo Samuel contract, and that's the latest on Vita Vea. Another piece of news, Eli Apple, 49ers veteran cornerback for the past season until he was cut a couple days ago, was on the visit list today, which tells me that the 49ers are planning to bring him back. Maybe that they didn't plan to have him away from the building for all too long. If you set foot inside an NFL building and you are not on a roster, you have to go on the visit list. And that's where Eli Apple was today. They cut him a couple days ago to make roster room because a lot of guys got hurt. The fact that he was on the visit list makes me think that he probably didn't even have to clean out his locker. They probably told him, hey, we're going to bring you back soon. Maybe not tomorrow morning, but possibly tomorrow morning, maybe the next day, maybe Thursday morning after tomorrow's practice in case somebody gets hurt and there needs to be a little bit of a roster shuffle. So don't be surprised to see Eli Apple, who is cornerback depth for the 49ers, former first-round pick, Ohio State product, entering his 11th NFL season. Don't be surprised to see him re-signed to the 49ers. And don't be surprised to see me answer some questions. We've got, almost 1,300 of you here, and we are ready for a big show. I think that we've already gotten the big show underway. We've heard Deebo Samuel's contract incentives. I'm happy to clarify anything that was unclear. Hopefully the graphics that Mike helped me make are very good there and help explain how the 49ers, their representation is obviously headed up by Brian Hampton. The representation of Deebo Samuel is Tory Dandy. Hampton took over contract negotiation from Parag Marathe, who now officially is only doing Leeds United. Over the course of the past 2 seasons, the 49ers phased Brian Hampton in to the lead contract negotiator role after the Brandon Ayuk contract negotiation in 2024. In 2025, Hampton got very quick work done with Brock Purdy, got very quick work done with Fred Warner, got very quick work done with George Kittle. In 2026, he got very quick work done with Trent Williams. None of this stuff over the course of the past 2 seasons under Brian Hampton has stretched into training camp, which is good news for the 49ers. I'm sure that makes Kyle Shanahan very, very happy. I'm sure it makes John Lynch very, very happy. Next up was Deebo Samuel. Different kind of contract. They're obviously not extending him. They were trying to pick up a free agent, and it was a special set of circumstances given the history with Deebo Samuel, the fact they were on good terms, but the fact that they knew that with the player's age and with the player's role really in a little bit of flux, right? Because you don't know exactly where you're going to need Deebo. He's more of a fill-in depth piece for the 49ers. They had to find a way to thread a needle contractually to make this make sense for both sides, to keep that salary cap hit under $5 million, but to give Deebo earning capability beyond $5 million. And if he ends up earning all $7 million, the salary cap hit will still be $4 million and change for this 2026 season. The 49ers will just pay the rest of it as a cap charge for 2027. You just pay it later. Ultimately, all money that you pay a player has to hit the salary cap, and the 49ers are in a spot where they've controlled how much is going to hit the salary cap in this 2026 season. I've got to show you guys dinner from today. It was really good. It was in Hayes Valley here in the city. Maybe the best quesadilla in San Francisco. It's a fried chicken quesadilla, actually, at Papito, which I am sending to my computer right now so I can share it to open up the Q&A. Hope you guys like the view. I know some days we have better color back there. Not quiet today, but still very, very nice. All right, let's take a look at the fried chicken quesadilla from Papito today in Hayes Valley. It's turned into one of my favorite dishes in San Francisco. I think it's fairly unique. I think it's very excellent, and I think Hayes Valley is one of my favorite neighborhoods. So this place, Chez Maman, which is a French restaurant, the founders of this French restaurant decided to get into the Mexican food business across the street, and they wanted to go hybrid Mexican French cuisine. So it's a French Mexican fusion. And they have quesadillas with like duck confit on them, and then they have this quesadilla that's got this breaded fried chicken on it, and it is insanely good. So that was Papito. That's our meal of the day here on the channel. All right, Savannah Lombardi has retired to bed, and I am ready to answer questions. She didn't have any questions. She was in the waiting room along probably like 150 of you before we started. So there's like 151 people in the waiting room. JT's upset that he just got off of work. Well, you could always rewind. We're only 20 minutes in. JT's a good, loyal viewer of ours. But yeah, you can always rewind and watch the rest of it that you missed. But right now, I will answer questions. Tell me about your life and Vita Vea eventually. Well, Vita Vea might get traded. Adam Schefter thinks that it's a very realistic possibility that he gets traded. Jeremy Fowler says the Bucks don't plan on trading him, but those plans can change. We can talk about cost. Osa Odigizua was there to be had for a third-round pick, but that was around free agency. This would be a later summer trade. Neither of those would be deadline trades unless the Vita Vea thing stretches out until November. I think Vita Vea, because of how well he plays the run, I mean, Tampa Bay's metrics against the run have been off the charts ever since 2018, and I think Vita Vea gets most of that credit because of how well he plays both the run and the pass is worth more than a third-round pick. He needs a new deal, which could be a complicator for some teams, but I think the cost for Vita Vea is going to be at least a 2. The fact that Dexter Lawrence, who's younger, went for the 10th overall pick when he went from the Giants to the Bengals leads me to believe that the Bucks are saying it's got to be a first-round pick. They might even be holding out right now and saying it's got to be a first-round pick from a team that we think won't be very good this year, so it's a high first-round pick. The problem for the 49ers is that they can offer a 1, but if they're going to be good this year, which I think is reasonable to expect with all the star players on this team, that first-round pick will be what? A 25, 26, 27, 20. If they win the Super Bowl, number 32. So for San Francisco, you're not able to offer a reasonable assumption of an extremely high pick. And if there are teams whom the Bucks think will be worse than the 49ers trying to trade for Vita Vea, I mean, it's a gambling game for Tampa Bay, obviously, if this is the game that they're playing. But if there are teams that they're confident will be worse than the 49ers, then those are technically more attractive offers. Now, Vita has to agree to an extension with any team that's trading for him for a trade to be consummated. I'm sure that nobody wants to trade a first-round pick just for 1 year of Vita Vea just so he would leave in free agency. I think that a new contract very likely has to go along with a trade. That's where Vita has his power. And remember that Ted Wynn of The Athletic reported the other week that Vita Vea wants to play for either a California team or for the Las Vegas Raiders. So Vita can just say, well, Cincinnati wants to trade for me. Screw that. I'm not going to sign a new contract with Cincinnati. Cleveland, double no. I'm not going to Cleveland. But he says, okay, San Francisco, yeah, I'm interested in that. I want to come home. Then he would be willing to negotiate a contract extension. And that's a way for potentially some of these better teams or some of Vita Vea's desired destinations to get ahead of worse teams who would theoretically be able to offer greater potential draft capital for him. But Osa Odigizua went for a third-round pick. Dallas, though, was in fire sale mode because they had too many defensive tackles. That was, I thought, poor planning on Dallas's part. This is just standard contractual unhappiness, and the planning for Tampa Bay revolves around Baker Mayfield. How are you going to get him paid? How are you going to create a salary cap sustainable situation? Vita's been under contract for a while. He's entering the final year of his deal. He's been with the team since 2018. At some point, you can't pay everybody. We have seen that with how the 49ers have had a run. The Rams, even, they had to hit a big reset button a few years ago. This is a salary cap league. You've got to figure out a way to stay underneath it. You choose when you press pedal to the metal and maybe mortgage part of the future. Would the 49ers do a little bit of that for a new contract for Vita Vea? I don't know. But he wants to play for the 49ers. He wants to play for a California team. He wants a trade. And He would be a good fit for anybody, just like Osa Odigizua, I think, is a good fit for anybody. And obviously for the 49ers, both Osa and Vita Vea on this top 5 list. And, when it comes to being able to beat double teams, that's such a valuable thing for a defense. If you can beat double teams, then it opens up so much. I mean, it creates interior pressure first and foremost. But just think of what Nick Bosa would be able to do. And just think of what he will be able to do with Osa Odigizua on the inside. The 49ers did not have a good interior pass rushing presence last year. Osa Odigizua had almost his entire pressure total nearly beat the 49ers defensive tackles combined last year. Osa had 52 on his own. The 49ers defensive tackles combined had 56. So I know that Bosa only played 2 games and change. He got hurt in week 3. Bosa was really effective when he was available. The 49ers were tracking to be a top 5 defense when Bosa was available through those first couple of games. But he was doing it without great defensive tackle push. I mean, Yetur Gross-Matos was asked to rush from the inside, but he wasn't a natural defensive tackle. 49ers have, I think, now what they hoped they would have with Javon Hargrave. In Osa Odigizua, you've got a younger player. Hargrave was just a little long in the tooth. He started to break down injury-wise for the 49ers. Really good pass rusher, still in the league, plays for the Packers now. But you've got a younger player in Osa Odigizua. And I think that, if anything, could make a Vita Vea trade more palatable for the 49ers, more palatable for the 49ers, because you're okay with going for the plus 30 player in Vita Vea if you already have a sub 30 anchor on the inside in Osa Odigizua. Either way, it would be a bigger roll of the dice for the 49ers. They've taken significant rolls of the dice in the past, but never in the form of a trade for a player on this side of 30. Christian McCaffrey was much younger when they traded for him. He was, 25 or 26 at the time, still very much in his prime. Now Christian has turned 30 years old. It's hard to believe it's already been 4 years since that trade in 2022. So, yeah, he was in the age 26 season. So this would be a different kind of swing for the 49ers, but it certainly would be intriguing. All right, I'm ready to answer your questions. Let's get to some more. Fernando says, everyone in this chat, let's storm and destroy the substation. We must end this curse. Well, what do you guys think of the candlestick curse? I actually think that's more likely than a substation argument. I'm not going to pretend to be a scientist, but if we're going to start to talk about supernatural stuff, the injuries really started skyrocketing for the 49ers the year that they left Candlestick Park. Is it a leaving this beautiful city behind me curse for the 49ers? Marcos says, F them picks, bring Vita Vea to the Bay. Again, they might have that mentality, but Tampa Bay might be saying, wait, we're going to wait to see if a team that we think is going to be bad and picking in the top 10 is willing to sell a first-round pick. I doubt, like Mike and I have been talking about this off air, I doubt that the 49ers have offered a 1 for Vita Vea, but Tampa Bay can either be waiting for a 1, or even if the 49ers have floated the idea, Tampa Bay can be waiting for what they think is going to be a better first-round pick. So it is going to be a very tricky needle to thread, plus the whole contract extension, which we know how crowded the 49ers salary cap situation is moving into the future. A lot of people say, well, they have all this space right now. They have this massive amount of salary cap room in the present, the most in the league, and that's because they've deferred all the costs to future years. And unused salary cap space carries over from season to season. So, yes, they have a ton of space this year, but they're planning on carrying over a lot of that into 2027 and beyond so they can pay those escalating bills. So if you do trade for Vita Vea, you're going to have to be really, really careful with how you thread that needle. Now, one could argue that this is the time to take a massive roll of the dice like that, but the 49ers of the late 90s, they desperately tried to keep the team together for as long as they could with Steve Young and Terrell Owens and Jerry Rice, and ultimately they didn't win a title, and then they hit salary cap hell, and they had to blow the team up, and they were bad for a long period of time. I mean, the 49ers from 1999 to 2011, That was a decade plus of dark ages, initially fueled by the salary cap hell brought upon by the mortgaging of the future of the late 1990s, the mid to late 1990s. The salary cap came into play, I believe, in 1993 or 1994. The 49ers crammed everything under the salary cap to win a Super Bowl in 94. They tried their best to hang on for dear life. 95, 96, 97, 98, 1999, I believe it was week 2 or week 3 in Arizona, Steve Young suffered the career-ending concussion when Aeneas Williams came in with the cornerback blitz, and Steve didn't immediately get up. He was knocked out for a good few seconds. Obviously, a very dark moment in the 49ers history. I know that there was a blip of positive from 1999 to 2011 with the Jeff Garcia era, and we know about the comeback against the New York Giants, but they were never serious contenders. The week after the 49ers came from behind 24 points against New York, they lost 31-6 to John Lynch and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So they were never close to rebuilding a team that could sniff the Super Bowl until 2011, when Jim Harbaugh came in and was this team's football coach. So you have to be very, very careful with how you manage the finances in the NFL, because once you lose that sustainability, it can be gone for a long, long time. It was like the end of the Roman Empire. Yep. The 49ers, you could say the way that crumbled toward the end of the 90s was like the decline and the ultimate collapse of the Roman Empire. The NFL had never seen, up to that point, a dynasty that had asserted itself at the top of the league for so long. From 1981, so from the early 80s, all the way to the late 90s, 2 decades, the 49ers were bona fide Super Bowl contenders year in and year out. They won 4 titles in the 1980s, 1 more in the 90s. And you think about all the different ways that they could have won more, had a break here or a break there fallen in their favor. I mean, we talk about Washington, 1983. The 49ers had 2 penalties called against Ronnie Lott in the NFC Championship game. Very controversial calls. I'll just put it out there. Probably bad calls. If those calls don't go against the 49ers, they probably beat the Redskins in 1983. You go to 1987. The 49ers were the number 1 seed, and they were shocked by the Minnesota Vikings. They were the best team in football that year. Analytically, everything. They just came out flat against Minnesota in 1987 at Candlestick in the playoffs and blew an opportunity to have home field advantage through the playoffs and win another Super Bowl. 1990, they were leading the New York Giants. We know that Joe Montana got hurt, but they still were ahead when Joe Montana got hurt. And Roger Craig, unfortunately for him, he's going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame this month, well-deserved. But the Roger Craig fumble cost the 49ers the NFC Championship game against the New York Giants, and it cost what would have been the NFL's only three-peat. The only three-peat in NFL history could have happened, but unfortunately, that Roger Craig fumble happened, and then the Matt Barr field goal beat the 49ers in that 1990 season. 92 and 93, Dallas was clearly better than the 49ers. 94, after the 93 NFC Championship game loss to the Cowboys, Carmen Policy, who was essentially the John Lynch of that era, the top executive for the 49ers of that era, maybe the Parag Marathe, a hybrid of Parag Marathe and John Lynch. Carmen Policy was in an elevator with Eddie DeBartolo Jr., the owner. And Eddie DeBartolo told Carmen Policy, I don't care what you have to do, find a way to beat Dallas next season. They were in an elevator at Texas Stadium, and Eddie D told Carmen Policy, we cannot lose to these guys a third time. Carmen Policy then went to the media and said, if we lose to Dallas, we die. Okay, so let's put this into perspective. If John Lynch came out and sat down at the lectern tomorrow, or stood up at the lectern tomorrow and said, if we don't win the Super Bowl, we're going to die, I mean, that would make every single NFL headline probably for the rest of the season. That's how intense things were ahead of the 1994 season when the 49ers beat the Dallas Cowboys. So they won their fifth Super Bowl. 96 or 95, the 49ers thought that they were going to be the repeat champions, that they weren't able to keep Ricky Waters. They were upset by the Green Bay Packers at home 27-17, the divisional round. That was a bad situation. I don't think they were the best team that year, though. So I don't know if there was that much regret about 95. 96, Green Bay was definitely the best team. 97, though, that was the year. 97 and 98, those were 2 years where I think the 49ers were so close to another title. 97, they had the number 1 seed. They had home field advantage. They lost the NFC title game at home to Green Bay. I think if Jerry Rice doesn't get hurt in 97, the 49ers have 6 Super Bowl trophies right now. Maybe they win 7 because they win the next year. 98, they beat the Packers finally with Terrell Owens in the catch 2, but they lose the next week to Atlanta by 2 points. They lose 20-18 after Garrison Hurst snapped his leg in half on the first play of the game. So you can say if Jerry Rice doesn't get hurt in 97, and if Garrison Hurst doesn't get hurt in 98, the 49ers have 7 Super Bowls. So the reason I illustrate this is that there are so many close misses over the course of the 80s and 90s from the 49ers. Even though they won 5 Super Bowls, they could have had so many more if just a couple different things went their way. And it's wild to think about. Obviously, Super Bowls haven't gone their way since then. They've lost several close calls, 2012, 2019, 2023. They're hoping to return this year with a veteran-laden, superstar-heavy roster, an old offense and a younger defense. I think the 49ers are comfortable with their setup, though, entering this year. They like that experience. They love their quarterback on the offensive side of the ball. How about that? I mean, speaking of Brock Purdy, saw a great tweet from Alex Sherman, who works for CNBC. He's done some really good interviews of 49ers personnel, including Jed York ahead of the Super Bowl. He said, every year, the analytics clearly say that Brock Purdy is a top 3 quarterback, I would say top 1 or 2 quarterback based on some of the advanced numbers. And every year we have these repetitive, tired polls of executives, of media members, of fans. I don't even care who they're polling because all these people are wrong. Every year we have people saying, oh, well, he's like the 11th or 12th or 13th or 14th best quarterback. And it's like, how the hell did you get there when you have very, very clear performance metrics that can be objectively applied to all quarterbacks that show you that Brock Purdy is at the top of the league? And they are reflecting Brock Purdy and his efficiency at the top of the league, even though he's had arguably the worst receiving core in all of football over the past 2 years. The separation scores have been bottom barrel for the 49ers. You cannot logically put that together. And at the end of the day, it is one massive ego protection exercise. Somebody's like, well, we should listen to the executives in the NFL and what they think, but it's the executives who failed to select Brock Purdy 261 times in 2022 who are doing this voting in some of these lists that we see online. So all of a sudden, the same executives who, from all the teams, failed to draft the NFL's most efficient quarterback, Brock Purdy this year is going to become the highest passer rating in NFL history. Highest qualifying passer rating in NFL history will belong to him after he makes a few more attempts to begin this 2026 season. So you're telling me that the executives who missed this guy 261 times in 2022 should be listened to on an unserious poll 4 years later regarding Brock Purdy's acumen as a quarterback? I'm not buying it. Those guys want to protect their reputations and their jobs. They don't want to admit that they completely missed and are routinely totally missing at the game's most important position. Brady was a 6th round pick. Purdy's a 7th round pick. Kurt Warner, undrafted free agent. I mean, there is a level of crapshoot to the NFL draft that executives don't want to admit is there because they want to pretend that their jobs are important. Fans don't want to admit is there because they're so invested in their own mock drafts and maybe in betting on this stuff. And the media doesn't want to admit it's there because the media tries to sell mock drafts every year, and they like to act like the actual draft is not some kind of random event, which it by and large is. That's what Brock Purdy coming out of the draft at pick number 262 told us. And it seems that nobody or very few people, I'm not afraid to admit it, but it seems that very, very few people are willing to acknowledge that because they, for whatever reason, are threatened and think that they will lose their power, that they're going to lose their credibility. And maybe they will. Maybe all they can write is a mock draft, right? But it happens every single season, this complete ignorance and this complete blindness to what Brock Purdy has actually accomplished. He's the most efficient quarterback in the NFL since joining the league in 2022. He's the most efficient quarterback in NFL history when it comes to passer rating. The EPA, the more advanced stats, the accuracy stats, the deep stats, the physical metrics even support that of an elite quarterback, such as the 10-yard split. The best pressure to sack ratio in the entire league last year, all combined with the fact that he has not been in an ideal system. You can scream Kyle Shanahan all you want, but the 49ers have had the worst wide receiver room for Brock Purdy over the course of the past 2 years. There is no place to rationally put Brock Purdy other than the top 5. Based on the actual production in football is a meritocracy. There is a much stronger argument that Brock Purdy is the best quarterback in all football than the 10th best quarterback in all football. There is no argument that he's the 15th best quarterback in all football. That's just stupidity. I think anything outside of 5, like above 5, 6, 7, 8, is just based on feelings and it's not based on facts. I understand that, there's a certain margin for error with numbers because of different situations. So I understand, but even though Purdy's situation hadn't been great, but there's a certain margin for error there that I will build into the calculation when we're debating some of this, and I'll cap it at the top 5. Fine, put him anywhere you want in the top 5. That's what he has earned. That's what the numbers, that's what the tape, that's what the actual objective data says. But anything beyond that, you're giving me feelings and you aren't giving me facts about Brock Purdy. All right, I'm going to answer a few more questions. We're having a lot of fun here. Good Tuesday evening show. 49ers had a day off today. Going to be back out at the facility tomorrow and Thursday. They're going to have a walkthrough on Friday, so I will not be there on Friday. Then they will have practice on Saturday, so I will be back there on Saturday. Then they will have a day off on Sunday, so I will not be there on Sunday. Then they will reset with 2 practices on Monday and Tuesday. As it's planned right now, Tuesday is going to be a joint practice with Robert Saleh and the Tennessee Titans. Kyle, I think Kyle has basically returned already. He has crept closer and closer to the action. He's giving players feedback. He was in the post-practice huddle that Mike Brown the New York Knicks coach, ended up breaking down the other day. Maybe Kyle officially is not back yet, but he's been so present out on that practice field. And, the furthest he's been is where John Lynch is standing. And John Lynch is usually very, very involved in these 49ers practices. So I think that Kyle officially might be back this week. If not, maybe for the joint practice against the Tennessee Titans. I'm going to try to include food in every video. If you guys want that, give me the thumbs up. This is a smart comment. Feels that the 49ers have a lot of injuries in early August, and you never know which of them are going to stick. Yeah, I wouldn't be worried about Mike Evans in the quad, though. I think that's already been demonstrated to be minor. I think that they're being precautionary with Dejan Stribling. I think that, guys like CJ West and Romello Hyder are already back at practice. So it's a good idea to just chill. Which mission burrito is Brock Purdy? Well, I think the best burrito in the mission is at Taqueria Cancun, but there are going to be different opinions, and people are going to have strong opinions on that. So, I mean, if you think he's at the very top, he's the best, then I would think he's Taqueria Cancun, but a lot of people will like La Taqueria as well. It's just as subjective as the top 5 of the quarterback rankings. All right, guys, we've hit 45 minutes. That's all that I wanted to do. Matthew wants to know the timetable of Kalon Black's adductor, not abductor, adductor. That is a core muscle injury. I don't know. I don't know if it's torn, if it's just a strain. I know strain technically is a tear. We shall see. They obviously did have to sign another running back in Khalil Herbert. Everybody hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. We'll be with you very, very soon.